The autumn wind rattled the windows of the small diner as Marcus Hayes sat in his usual corner booth, nursing his third cup of coffee. At 72, he had become a fixture here, a quiet man with silver hair and weathered hands that trembled slightly when he lifted his mug. The young waitress, Sarah, always smiled at him with genuine warmth, and he appreciated that more than she would ever know. Since losing his wife Eleanor 2 years ago, these small kindnesses were the threads that kept him tethered to the world. Before we continue, I want to know something. Where are you watching this from right now? United States? United Kingdom? India? Pakistan? Canada? Australia? Wherever you are in this world, drop your country name in the comments. I love seeing how these stories connect people across borders. Now back to Marcus. He had stopped talking about his past decades ago. The Navy chaplain who visited him once suggested he might find peace in sharing his story, but Marcus disagreed. What could he say that would make sense to people who had never stood on a destroyer's deck in the South China Sea, watching the horizon for threats that could appear in seconds? What words could capture the weight of decisions made in moments, decisions that saved some lives and ended others? So he kept his silence, wore his old Navy cap, and minded his own business. That afternoon, everything changed when a young woman rushed into the diner, her face pale with fear. She couldn't have been more than 25, with dark hair pulled back in a ponytail and tears streaming down her cheeks. Behind her, a heavy-set man in his 40s pushed through the door, his face twisted with rage. The handful of customers in the diner suddenly found their food fascinating, eyes dropping to their plates as the man grabbed the woman's arm. "You think you can just walk away from me?" The man snarled, his grip tightening until she cried out in pain. "I told you what would happen if you embarrassed me like that." Marcus felt his heart hammering in his chest. Every instinct told him to look away, to be smart, to remember that he was an old man whose glory days were 40 years behind him. But then he heard a small voice from across the diner. A little boy, maybe 6 years old, sat frozen in a booth with his grandmother. The boy's eyes were wide with tears as he whispered, "Grandad, please help her." The boy wasn't talking to Marcus, but something in those words unlocked a door inside him that had been closed for too long. Marcus stood up, his legs steadier than they had been in years. He walked across the diner and placed himself between the man and the young woman. "Let her go," Marcus said quietly, his voice carrying the weight of command he thought he had forgotten. The man laughed, a harsh sound. "Stay out of this, old man. This is between me and my girlfriend." "I'm not your girlfriend anymore," the woman said, her voice shaking but determined. "I told you it's over. Now, if you're feeling the emotion in this story, do me a favor. Hit that like button right now. It takes 1 second but means the world to this channel." The man raised his hand and Marcus moved without thinking. Decades of training took over as he caught the man's wrist and applied just enough pressure to make him release the woman. "I said let her go. You have 2 choices. You can leave now, or you can leave in handcuffs when the police arrive." Sarah already called them. It was a bluff, but Marcus's tone made it believable. The man jerked his hand away, his face flushing with humiliation and anger. He jabbed a finger at Marcus. "You just made a big mistake, old man." "Wouldn't be my first," Marcus replied evenly. The man stormed out, and Marcus turned to the young woman. "Are you okay? Is there somewhere safe you can go?" She nodded, tears of gratitude replacing tears of fear. "My sister's house, thank you." "I don't know what would have happened if you hadn't. You would have found your courage another way," Marcus interrupted gently. "You were already walking out that door when I stood up. Sometimes we just need someone to stand with us." The next day, Marcus returned to his usual booth. Sarah brought his coffee and mentioned that someone had been asking for him. An older gentleman in a Navy uniform had left his card. Marcus picked it up, his hands trembling as he read, "Rear Admiral James Chun, retired." That afternoon, Admiral Chun sat across from Marcus in the same booth. "Marcus Hayes, I've been looking for you for 20 years. Chun's eyes held a mixture of respect and emotion. "You were my commanding officer on the USS Fitzgerald. You saved my life during that storm off the Philippines when I fell overboard. You dove in without hesitation, even though you couldn't swim well yourself." Marcus felt his throat tighten. "I was just doing my job. you taught me what leadership really means, Chun continued. Yesterday, my granddaughter texted me about an old veteran who stood up for a woman in a diner. She works here. That's Sarah. When she described you and mentioned your Navy cap, I knew it had to be you. Chun reached across the table, his voice breaking. Sir, you're still saving lives. You never stopped being the man who taught me that courage isn't about being fearless. It's about acting when every part of you wants to stay safe. Marcus looked around the diner, at Sarah smiling behind the counter. At the empty booth where the little boy had sat with his grandmother? I heard a child ask his grandfather to help, Marcus said softly. And I realized that's who I still am, even without the uniform. That's who we all should be, Chun nodded, understanding passing between them without words. Some bonds, Marcus realized, never break. Some duties never end. And sometimes, the most important battles we fight are the ones that happen in small diners on ordinary afternoons, when we choose to stand up when it would be easier to look away. This story reminds us that heroes don't retire. They just wait for the moment when the world needs them again. Marcus could have looked away. He could have stayed in his booth, protected by age and silence. But he chose courage. He chose to be the person a child hoped his grandfather would be. And in that choice, he found himself again. If this story touched your heart, if it reminded you that it's never too late to stand up for what's right, then please subscribe to this channel. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it today. Because stories like these, stories about ordinary people doing extraordinary things, deserve to be told. They deserve to be remembered. And they deserve to inspire the next person who finds themselves at a crossroads, wondering if they have the courage to act. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next story.